The end of Amara Bennett's marriage began beneath a crystal chandelier. The Bennett mansion glowed with expensive perfection that night. Marble floors, gold-framed portraits, white roses in silver vases. In the center of that polished silence stood Malcolm Bennett, holding divorce papers with a $500 check resting on top. Amara stared at the check. $500. That was what her marriage had been reduced to. Her throat tightened. "Malcolm, what is this?" He looked at her, but whatever answer she deserved never came. Then came the click of heels. Lorraine Bennett, Malcolm's mother, crossed the foyer in cream silk and diamonds, her expression composed, satisfied, almost regal in its cruelty. She stopped beside her son and looked at Amara the way people look at something they have already decided to discard. "Take this money, sign the papers, and never come back," she said. "You're no longer part of this family." The words hit Amara harder than a slap. She turned to Malcolm, waiting for one protest, one interruption, one sign he still remembered who she was to him. But Malcolm remained silent. He didn't defend her or challenge his mother. He didn't move. That silence hurt more than Lorraine's words ever could. Amara took the pen with trembling fingers. Tears burned behind her eyes as she signed where the tabs marked her name. Each stroke felt like the quiet burial of a future she had protected for years. Lorraine took the papers back immediately. Amara picked up the check, too. Not because she wanted their money, because she would not leave empty-handed while they stood there deciding her worth. "I'll get my things," she whispered. "Take only what belongs to you," Lorraine replied. Upstairs, in the bedroom she had tried to make feel like home, Amara packed a small suitcase, a few clothes, a sweater, her passport, one framed photograph, and an old cardiothoracic surgery textbook she had once promised herself she would reopen when life became less complicated. Life never had. When she came back downstairs, Malcolm was still standing in the same place, as if even guilt required more movement than he was willing to make. At the front door, Amara paused. A small, desperate part of her still hoped he would stop her and become, in one brave second, the man she thought she had married. He didn't. Amara opened the door herself. Cold night air rushed into the foyer. She stepped outside, carrying one suitcase in one hand and a $500 check in the other, tears finally slipping down her face. No one followed her. No one called her back. 5 years later, both of them would be standing in a hospital, praying for the woman they once threw away. Because the only surgeon left in America who might save Lorraine Bennett's life would be Dr. Amara Bennett. Before Amara became a famous surgeon, she had simply been a young woman in love. She met Malcolm at a university fundraising gala. She was helping organize seating charts for scholarship hours. He was there because the Bennett family name was written across the donor wall in gold. Amara noticed him by the coffee station. "You look like you'd rather be anywhere else," she told him. He looked up, surprised, then laughed. "Is it that obvious?" "Only to someone who also doesn't enjoy rich people congratulating themselves." That made him smile for real. He stayed near her after that, pretending to ask about the schedule while finding excuses to keep talking. When he noticed medical flashcards in her bag, he asked what she was studying. "Pre-med," she said. "Planning to be a doctor?" "A cardiothoracic surgeon." He blinked, impressed. "Why the heart?" Amara answered without hesitation. "Because if the heart fails, everything changes. If you can save a heart, you don't just save a life, you save everything tied to it." He watched her for a moment and said softly, "You sound like someone who was born to save people." Their love grew with easy sincerity. Malcolm picked her up after study sessions with coffee in both hands. He listened when she talked about school, money, and fear. He admired her ambition instead of shrinking from it. He proposed in a botanical garden at sunset, saying, "My world is complicated, but with you, I know where home is." Amara believed him completely. What she did not understand yet was that Lorraine Bennett had already decided Amara did not belong. At first, Lorraine hid her contempt behind manners. "What does your father do?" she asked at their first formal dinner. "He teaches history at a public high school," Amara said. Lorraine smiled. How admirable. On another evening, she asked how Amara expected to balance medicine with being Malcolm's wife. "By working hard at both," Amara answered. Lorraine lifted her glass. Some roles are too important to divide. But Lorraine never came around. After the wedding, she became sharper. She criticized Amara's clothes, mocked her hospital hours, and treated her ambition like disrespect. Still, Amara kept trying. She swallowed insult after insult because she believed patience might one day become acceptance. That peace slowly became one-sided. Malcolm started changing in small ways first. He canceled dinners because Lorraine needed him, and repeated opinions that sounded more like hers than his own. "Maybe Mom just worries you're pushing yourself too hard. She's from a different generation, Amara. Try not to take everything personally. Do you really need another overnight shift this week? It creates tension." As if the problem were Amara chasing her future, not Lorraine trying to reduce it. One night after a brutal hospital shift, Amara sat on the edge of the bed, still wearing scrubs, while Malcolm stood near the window with his back to her. "Mom thinks this marriage is making both of us miserable," he said. Amara stared at him. "Then turn around and tell me it's about you." He didn't. Weeks later, Lorraine invited the daughter of a wealthy family friend to brunch and seated her beside Malcolm while speaking to her with visible approval. Amara sat there feeling erased. That night she confronted him. "She introduced that woman to you like I wasn't your wife." Malcolm rubbed his forehead. "It was just brunch." "No, it was humiliation." "You're overreacting." Amara's eyes filled. "I'm reacting to being erased in my own marriage." But even then, she still loved him. Love can survive disappointment longer than it should. What it cannot survive forever is abandonment disguised as peace. Lorraine understood that. She spoke more openly to Malcolm about image, inheritance, and how dangerous it was for a man in his position to stay tied to someone from what she called a smaller world. The final fracture came when Amara overheard Lorraine tell a guest, "The marriage was a sentimental mistake. He'll correct it soon enough." Amara walked into the study shaking. "If you have something to say about me, say it in front of me." Lorraine set down her teacup. "Very well. My son married beneath his station, and it has made his life smaller." Amara turned to Malcolm, desperate for one act of loyalty. "Tell her she's wrong." He looked between them, trapped not by duty, but by fear. Then he said the sentence that broke something inside her. "Maybe we both need to ask whether this is still working." Even after that, Amara hoped he would wake up. He never did. And that was how the divorce papers ended up beneath the chandelier. The first night after leaving the mansion, Amara slept on a fold-out bed in her cousin Naomi's apartment and stared at the check until sunrise. Naomi found her awake. "You don't have to cash that," she said gently. Amara looked at the paper. "I know." "Then why keep it?" Amara swallowed hard. "Because one day I want to remember exactly what they thought I was worth." The months that followed almost broke her. She worked grueling shifts, studied through heartbreak, cried in locker rooms, then washed her face and went back to work. Residency became fellowship. Fellowship became reputation. Reputation became excellence. In operating rooms, her hands stayed steady when others panicked. Patients trusted her because she listened. Years passed, and Amara became one of America's most respected cardiothoracic surgeons. Medical journals wrote about her outcomes. Reporters called her miracle-handed after she completed a repair other teams had considered impossible. She kept the name Bennett professionally because she had redefined it through her own talent, discipline, and compassion. Most important of all, she never built her success around revenge. And then, life turned. 5 years after the divorce, Lorraine Bennett collapsed at a charity board meeting. One moment she was speaking with polished authority. The next, she clutched her chest and fell. Malcolm's world changed in a single phone call. He rushed to the hospital. Tests came first, then more tests, then transfers to better specialists and one of the top cardiac centers in the country. Doctors spoke in careful tones, but the truth kept sharpening. Lorraine had developed a rare, life-threatening heart condition. The anatomy involved was dangerously complex. Surgery might save her, but the risks were enormous. Malcolm sat across from a senior cardiologist in a private consultation room. "We've spoken to every specialist we can," the doctor said. Malcolm leaned forward. "And?" The doctor exhaled. "Most believe the operation carries extraordinary risk. There is only one surgeon left with a realistic chance of helping your mother." Hope and dread collided in Malcolm's chest. "Who?" The doctor slid a file toward him. Malcolm opened it. His breath caught. At the top of the page, above awards, publications, and surgical outcomes, was a name he had not spoken aloud in years. Dr. Amara Bennett. He stared in disbelief. No. The doctor mistook his reaction. "I know her schedule is difficult, but if anyone can do this, it's Dr. Bennett." The woman he abandoned. The woman his mother humiliated. The woman they treated like disposable. Now the only person who might save Lorraine's life. That night, Malcolm sat alone in the hospital chapel. For years he had described the divorce to himself with words like complicated and inevitable. Now those words sounded dishonest. He had failed. Because when love required courage, he chose comfort. He remembered Amara laughing over late-night coffee, sleeping over medical flashcards, pausing at the mansion door that final night as if giving him one last chance to be the man she believed he was. He had done nothing. The next morning, he asked to meet Dr. Bennett. When Amara entered the consultation room later that day, Malcolm stood so quickly his chair scraped the floor. She wore navy scrubs under a white coat, her hair tied back, her expression calm. She looked powerful, in the quiet way truly accomplished people do. For a moment, he could only stare. She was still Amara, and far beyond the woman he had once failed. "Dr. Bennett," he said. She gave a small nod. "Mr. Bennett." The formality cut deeper than anger. "You reviewed my mother's case?" "Yes." "Can she survive this?" Amara set the file on the table. "Her condition is severe but operable. The surgery is difficult. There are no guarantees." He searched her face for resentment and found only discipline. "Will you do it?" A pause. "If your mother consents," she said. "Yes." That was all. No bitterness, just principle. It made Malcolm feel smaller than he had ever felt. "She doesn't know it's you," he said quietly. Amara looked at him directly. "Then tell her." When Malcolm told Lorraine, her face drained of color. "No," she whispered from her hospital bed. "There must be someone else." "There isn't." She shook her head. "I can't place my life in her hands after everything that happened." Malcolm's voice turned rough. "She placed her whole life in ours, and we shattered it." Lorraine stared at him, shocked. He continued, the truth finally stronger than his fear. "If she were like us, maybe she'd walk away." She didn't. Lorraine's eyes filled. "She agreed?" "If you consent, yes." Her composure cracked. "After everything I did to her?" Malcolm had no answer. Some mercy cannot be explained by the people receiving it. It can only be honored. That night, Lorraine listened to the machines in the dark and realized wealth had run out of power. Status could not command a failing heart to keep beating. Pride could not protect her from fear. By morning, she signed the consent form with shaking fingers. The day of the operation arrived wrapped in gray rain. Lorraine was wheeled through bright hallways toward the operating suite while Malcolm walked beside her. For once, the Bennett family had no control here. Only the skill of the woman they had once thrown away. Then the operating room doors opened. Lorraine slowly looked up and froze. Amara stood there in a white coat over surgical attire, calm and composed, her name stitched above her heart. Dr. Amara Bennett, the same woman Lorraine had forced out of the mansion with a $500 check. Lorraine's lips trembled. "Amara." Amara stepped closer. "Mrs. Bennett, I'm going to take care of you." Lorraine's tears came instantly. "After everything I did to you, why would you save me?" Amara held her gaze. "My character was never defined by the way you treated me." Lorraine looked away and cried openly. Malcolm stood outside the sterile threshold, stunned all over again by the steadiness of the woman he had lost. Amara turned to her team and began issuing instructions with quiet precision. Panic had no place near her. Before anesthesia carried Lorraine under, she whispered through tears, "I'm sorry." Amara didn't answer with easy comfort. "Rest," she said. "Save your strength." And then the surgery began. It proved even harder than the scans had suggested. The degeneration extended farther than expected. Scar tissue complicated access. Every minute demanded total concentration. "Bypass established," an assistant said. "Pressure?" Amara asked. "Stable for now." "Suction. More light." Time lost meaning inside the operating room. Then a reading dropped. "Pressure falling," a resident warned. "I see it," Amara said. "Clamp. Patch ready, on my count." Her calm held the room together. Outside, Malcolm paced beneath the red operative light while rain streaked the windows. Hours passed. Memory kept finding him. Amara laughing in their first apartment. Amara studying at the kitchen table. Amara looking back from the mansion doorway while he stood there silent and weak. A nurse stepped out once and reported complications. Malcolm felt the floor drop beneath him. "Is she alive?" "Dr. Bennett is handling it," the nurse said. Back inside, the operation tightened into its most dangerous stretch. Unexpected bleeding. Rhythm instability. Another high-risk correction. Amara never lost control. She moved with the certainty of someone who had trained through pain and turned discipline into instinct. Finally, after hours that felt endless, the repaired heart responded. A rhythm returned, then held. The room exhaled. Amara stayed focused through closure, final checks, and every last careful step between hope and safety. Only when she was certain Lorraine had crossed the worst of it did she step back. "Procedure complete," she said. Her voice stayed level. But behind the control was exhaustion. And beneath the exhaustion was peace. Lorraine Bennett had survived. When Malcolm saw Amara walking down the recovery corridor, he stood immediately. "How is she?" Amara removed her cap. "The surgery was successful. The next 24 hours matter, but she made it through." Relief hit him so hard he had to steady himself. "Thank you." The words felt too small. Amara gave a slight nod and moved to pass him. "Amara," he said, stopping himself from saying more than he had any right to say. "I know I have no right, but when you're ready, I need to tell you the truth about what I did." She looked at him without anger, but without softness either. "I don't owe you that conversation," she said. "I know. And saving your mother doesn't erase what happened." "I know that too." She walked away. For once, Malcolm did not ask for more. Lorraine's recovery was slow but steady. The first time she was fully alert, she asked to see Amara. When Amara entered the room after rounds, Lorraine looked fragile in a way Amara had never seen before. Not just physically, spiritually. "I've tried to rehearse this apology," Lorraine said. "Nothing feels enough." Amara remained quiet. Lorraine swallowed. "I was cruel to you because I worshipped status. I thought wealth made people valuable. I thought control meant protection. And I taught my son to mistake obedience for strength." Her voice shook. "What I did to you was deeply wrong." Amara met her eyes. "Yes, it was." Lorraine nodded through tears. "You loved this family when we did not deserve it, and you still saved my life. If you never forgive me, I will understand." Then Amara spoke. "Forgiveness is not pretending the wound never existed." Lorraine looked up. "I can forgive you," Amara said, "without becoming the same woman who stood defenseless in your foyer." Lorraine covered her mouth and cried. A few days later, Malcolm met Amara in the hospital courtyard. He stood when she approached. "I asked for this conversation," he said. "So I'll say what I should have said years ago, and then I'll let you walk away if that's what you want. I failed you. Not because I never loved you, because I was weak. I let fear of disappointing my mother matter more than defending my wife. I watched you be humiliated and called it peace because courage would have cost me comfort." Amara listened in silence. He continued. "For years I blamed pressure, timing, family, everything except myself. But it was me. I signed those papers. I handed you that check. I let you walk out alone." His voice broke. "And every extraordinary thing you became after that, you became without me." Amara looked at him steadily. "Do you know what hurt most?" He answered immediately. "My silence." "Yes," she said. "Your mother's cruelty wounded me. Your silence broke me." He lowered his head. "I could have survived her disapproval," Amara continued. "What nearly destroyed me was realizing the person I trusted most would not stand beside me. Tears filled his eyes. "You're right." She held his gaze for a long moment. "I forgive you, Malcolm." Hope flashed across his face. Then she tempered it with truth. "But forgiveness and trust are different things." He nodded slowly. "What does that mean for us?" "It means there is no untouched version of us waiting where you abandoned it," she said. "If you've changed, your actions will prove it, not your regret." He took a breath. "Then I'll prove it, even if it changes nothing." For the first time in years, Amara saw humility in him. It wasn't enough by itself, but it mattered. The months that followed became the real test. Change over time is the only proof that counts. Lorraine began quietly funding cardiac care for low-income patients through Amara's hospital network. When Amara found out, Lorraine said, "I'm not trying to impress you. I'm trying to become someone I can respect." She apologized to staff members she had dismissed over the years and to acquaintances she had judged for not belonging to the right circles. Malcolm changed too. He stopped hiding behind politeness when people said cruel things in respectable voices. He challenged comments he once would have ignored and corrected his mother gently but firmly when old habits returned. Trust returned slowly, like healing after major surgery. Delicate, measured, real. One rainy evening, months later, Amara accepted Lorraine's invitation to dinner at the mansion. The house felt different the moment she stepped inside, not because the chandeliers had changed, but because the power inside the house had. Lorraine met her at the door herself, with no staff and no performance. "You look tired," Lorraine said gently. "Long day?" "Very." Lorraine nodded toward the kitchen. "There's soup on the stove. Malcolm made it, so this is either thoughtful or dangerous." A laugh escaped Amara before she could stop it. Dinner was simple. No guests. Malcolm served the plates. Lorraine asked about one of Amara's pediatric cases and listened carefully. When silence settled, it no longer felt hostile. After dinner, Amara wandered toward the staircase and stopped. The memory hit all at once: the suitcase, the check, the tears, the door. Malcolm appeared nearby and understood. "I think about that night all the time," he said quietly. Amara didn't look at him. "So do I. If I could undo one moment in my life, it would be that one." She turned. "You can't undo it." "I know. But you can keep becoming someone who would never repeat it." He nodded. "That's what I'm trying to do." Something in her loosened then, not because the pain was gone, but because the future no longer felt impossible. Over the following weeks, she visited more often. First for dinners, then for afternoons in the garden, then for quieter moments that meant more than grand gestures ever could. Lorraine asked for tea and conversation instead of control. Malcolm replaced the white roses near the front drive with lilies because he remembered Amara had always loved them. One evening, Lorraine handed Amara a small envelope. Inside was the original $500 check, preserved carefully. Amara looked up in surprise. Lorraine's voice shook. "I kept it. At first out of pride, then out of shame. It belongs to you now, not as payment, but as proof of who I was and who I never want to be again." Amara stared at the check, then closed the envelope. "I'll keep it," she said, "as proof that grace can outlive humiliation." Lorraine cried quietly. Winter gave way to spring. Trust deepened through consistency. Lorraine grew softer. Malcolm grew steadier. Amara grew less guarded because she could finally see real transformation. One afternoon, after walking with Lorraine through the garden during cardiac rehabilitation, Amara stood at the edge of the lawn and looked back at the mansion. It no longer felt like the place that had swallowed her dignity. It felt like a house learning how to deserve truth. Malcolm stepped beside her. "I had the West study redesigned," he said. "Into what?" "A home office for you, and a reading room, only if you ever want it." She stayed quiet. He added, "Nothing in this house would ever be yours by permission again, only by right." The wind moved softly through the trees. "I'm not coming back to the life we had," Amara said. "I know. If I ever return, it will be to something new, honest, equal, no silence where loyalty is required." Malcolm met her gaze. "Then that's the only future I want." Weeks later, Amara made her choice. There was no public announcement or dramatic spectacle, just family. Family this time. Lorraine was in the kitchen pretending not to supervise dessert. Malcolm was setting the table. Evening light covered the mansion in warmth instead of cold perfection. Amara walked in carrying an overnight bag. Malcolm looked up and froze. Lorraine turned, saw the bag, and covered her mouth. Amara set it near the staircase, the same staircase she had once descended with tears and a shattered heart. "I thought," she said softly, "I might stay." Lorraine began crying instantly. Malcolm's eyes filled too. He didn't rush toward her. "Are you sure?" he asked. Amara smiled. "I'm sure this time we understand what home is supposed to feel like." Lorraine stepped forward and stopped a respectful distance away. "May I hug you?" Amara opened her arms. Lorraine fell into them and wept, holding the woman she once threw away and now loved with genuine respect. When they parted, Malcolm approached carefully. Amara looked at him, and in that one look lived 5 years of pain, growth, regret, forgiveness, and rebuilding. Then she reached for his hand. That simple gesture said everything. Not that the past had disappeared, or that trust had been free, but that love rebuilt on truth can return wiser than before. Later that night, the three of them sat together in the living room while rain tapped softly against the windows. The same kind of rain had followed Amara into darkness 5 years earlier. Only now she wasn't leaving. Lorraine fell asleep halfway through an old movie, one hand resting lightly over the scar on her chest. The scar that reminded her daily that the woman she once rejected had saved her life and her soul. Malcolm draped a blanket over his mother, then sat back down beside Amara. He looked at her quietly. "Every doctor said my mother needed a miracle." Amara listened to the rain. "She did." He took her hand. "Turns out we all did." Amara's eyes filled, but this time her tears carried no humiliation, no abandonment, no fear. Only peace. Because sometimes the most extraordinary healing does not begin when a heart starts beating again on an operating table. Sometimes it begins when pride finally breaks, when silence finally tells the truth, when regret becomes action, and when people who once destroyed love choose, day after day, to rebuild it with honesty. Sometimes the greatest miracle isn't saving someone's life. It's healing the hearts that were broken long before.